Good afternoon, everyone. This event symbolises a semi-return to normality. We have changed from the challenges of the last few years of the pandemic, and now we're moving through to the opportunities available to us as we recover. But nothing is guaranteed. We still have challenges. The war is raging in Europe. Not only does it challenge the values and freedom that we all take for granted, it's also threatening the economies of the world. Our help to Ukraine comes with a price tag. It will have to be paid for. We're starting to see it with inflation, rising costs, rising prices, and that will be with us for some time to come. And if you add into that burden, paying for the measures that the government took through the pandemic, things are by no means as rosy as they were prior to a few years ago. We've got a tourist-dependent city, but that's the victim of airports and airlines that are frustrating rather than helping visitors to come. We need to sort that out quickly, and we need to get the energy and vibrancy of the West End back to where it was pre-pandemic, with tourist numbers going through the roof. And the West End needs investment. It needs investments to refresh what we've seen, a tourist centre, a world centre, but one which is getting quite faded in terms of its offering, in terms of public realm. And what's more, we have a government that seems not to listen to the voices of London in particular. We will continue to add our voices to those that make sure the government understands the consequences of ignoring London, its businesses, and its economy. You cannot ignore the needs of the nation's powerhouse to deal with regional powerhouses. The economy of central London drives the UK, and we need to make sure that we get the right investment to bring it back to where it should be to help other parts of the country. So we do have challenges, but this, in my view, is a new dawn. We've just had one of the most memorable weekends that anybody will ever have. We saw through the Platinum Jubilee a world that is fascinated by the UK, and one where the monarchy has an offer that nowhere else can match. We need to build on it and bring people back to the UK so they spend their cash. Regional visitors are important, but that's redistribution. International visitors are vital, that's new money. And we need to get that back, and we need to grow it to get our businesses back, our jobs growing, and the economy building around the world. We also saw the monarchy redefining and modernising its approach to be more relevant to a younger generation. It's a challenge that businesses face every day. We need to deal with new access forms, new ways of marketing, new ways of talking to potential customers, and new ways of offering service. And it's a more diverse population. So we can learn from what the monarchs have started to introduce through their regime. A new way of engaging, new methods of doing it, and a fresh face on the main agenda. Tourism brings wealth and prosperity to the UK. It brings it to London, it brings it to Westminster, and it brings it to the West End. We need to do much more to encourage people to come and make their visit one that they want to repeat again and again and again. We will work with the mayor to drive those tourist numbers. We already have good relationships. We intend to use them, grow them, and mould them to our purpose. That's the way that we can get more than we can get on our own. We've seen the opening of the Elizabeth line. Well, nearly. Hopefully Bond Street will follow fairly quickly. Andy has met his promises in terms of what he will open. We expect him to do the same on Bond Street. We shouldn't underestimate the importance of a modern, well-funded public transport system as an economic necessity for the sort of area that we are. So we will support the mayor to get a fair deal for London and the West End. And we will work with the mayor to deliver a fair settlement, or certainly to campaign for it. Because without it, we will not have the infrastructure in the West End to support the vibrancy and the use that will be created through bigger and better tourist numbers. Importantly, we have a new Labour administration in the city. It's unparalleled, it's uncharted. We've never worked with a Labour administration before. They have clear ambition, they have clear policies, and will come out with clear priorities in the near future, I think. And we're good partners. Our success is important, but we know that that success needs to be shared with the residents and the visitors to make the area really attractive and to create co-investment from a Labour administration. Businesses need to be part of the community, not an irritant to the community. And we are working hard to do that. The relationships that Jason and the team have built have created an atmosphere where we are supporting residents, we know what they want and we deliver, and we share common agendas and common goals. We need to do much more of it. It's a partnership that we want to see flourish with the City Council. We want to see the Oxford Street programme become a project. We've talked about a vision, we've talked about a programme, let's make it a project. One that's going to be delivered. We've been talking about it now for 6 years. We've had 3 visions. I think normally people are canonised for 3 visions. We need to get this done, and this time it needs to be different because this is a unique opportunity. We'll work with the City Council to make the West End a place to be proud of. Whether you're a resident, whether a visitor, or whether you're a tourist. It really does matter. So a new dawn for the West End is possible. It's going to be hard, it's going to be difficult, and there will be more challenges and more financial difficulties along the way. But with a new ambition, there's one thing that we can do, and that is make the West End a much better place than it is now. And that's our ambition. The final thing that we're changing is our Chief Executive. Now, some may say thankfully, but personally I'm not sure about that. Jace has been a fixture in the West End. I think we repaint him every 6 years under the maintenance programme, but he's been somebody that's added value and created an enormous reputation for the West End. He'll be sorely missed. But one of the things about a good Chief Executive is they are rarely missed when they go, because they build a team of succession that can carry on delivering. And Jace has done that. Dee and the team are brilliant. Jace has taken all the plaudits, they've done all the work. It's the normal rules for Chief Executive and staff. That's the way it works and that's the way it's done. The work will carry on, the credit will go elsewhere, but the team are committed to the future of the West End and its success. I think Jace is now going to give you his final version of what he's achieved. I've cut it down from 3 days, so it shouldn't take that long. But hopefully you'll get a flavour of what we're about. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everybody, and on behalf of the full team at USN Company, it's such a joy to see you here in real life this afternoon. It was actually 3 years ago that we were last together in a similar situation like this, our annual review, around the corner at the Mayfair Hotel. And we also marked New USN Company's 20-year anniversary at that point. And very interesting, coming up from the lift this evening with Julian Milner from Stowe, we were talking about the fact that bids are now being in the UK for 20 years. It was a study trip back in 2002 where they looked at this model, wanted to embrace it here in the UK, and I think actually with 300 bids around the country and 50 in London, they've really proven themselves to be successful. And testament to that, as Peter said, is the brilliant team we have at New USN Company delivering on behalf of the members. But a lot has changed in the last 3 years, and to say that it's a fundamental shift, I think, is an understatement of the century. But what hasn't changed, as Peter said also, is the resolute commitment of the team at New USN Company to really support our members and our partners every single day right through the pandemic and also into this period of renewal that we're going into ahead. And although this past period has really tested us both personally and professionally, I've been really struck how in very challenging times we've come together as a team, we've come together as businesses with our colleagues, and we've come together to really support the West End through this period, and long may that continue in the period ahead as well. So in March last year, you gave us literally a vote of confidence by renewing our future for a further 5 years, guaranteeing at least £40 million investment into this district. And it was actually the highest bid ballot result of any bid around the world, until I get to Sydney in a couple of years' time and have our first ballot. But it really is testament to the fact, to the team at USN Company and the services that we provide every day throughout. So thank you. to all of you, our members and partners, for supporting us, and thank you to the team at USN Company who've really stepped up and delivered, particularly in the last couple of years as well. We stood on a manifesto to drive growth, 2 years of recovery, 3 years of growth after that. We want to be one of the most sustainable and innovative districts in the world. And our overall aim is to return the West End back to 10 billion turnover, which we were pre-COVID. We want to continue to be a driver of employment in this area, investment, commerce and culture, and not just for the City of Westminster, but also for the capital and the country. And we did set out some very ambitious targets, which I'm going to share with you in a moment. It isn't 3 days worth, but certainly some highlights of the last fiscal year. And I think, these are tough targets for the team, and probably not tough enough sometimes for the chairman, but certainly we do measure ourselves independently. We make sure that every penny you're investing in the USN Company, we're maximising that for a return for you, for our members and partners. So let me just share some of those results with you. This is the last fiscal year as well, and I think it's fair to say in the last 3 months actually we've seen some very good numbers in terms of footfall returning and spend as well in converters. We're looking up until the 31st of March this year. We set ourselves a target last fiscal year to get back to 5.2 billion turnover. We were 10 billion pre-COVID. We did better than that. We got to 6 billion, which is excellent at the end of March. And actually, and you'll hear from Paddy and colleagues later, we are now getting back to almost 2019 levels in sales in some days. Very high conversions. Obviously, a lot of that is domestic driven. We've seen some international return. We want more of that, of course. And we're well on track, I hope, to get back to that 10 billion in the next couple of years, which is a driving force for all of us at USN Company. On footfall, we are seeing some marked changes now. We were talking earlier about Friday afternoons have become the new Monday afternoons for people that aren't in the office necessarily, and Sundays have now become even stronger perhaps than Saturdays in terms of conversions and sale densities as well. So there's a shift, and it will need to settle back down again in terms of some of those macro trends. But footfall, we wanted to get back to at least 50% on 2019 levels in the last fiscal year. We did better than that. We got up to 60%, but you'll remember Omicron was the gift that kept giving over Christmas. But I have to say the numbers have returned and are really stabilising now. And I think the Jubilee, certainly, we had some strong figures that weekend as well, which is driving that demand. Good to hear some American accents around the place as well that they're shopping here. On the voids, I mean, I've worked in the West End 20 years. Colleagues around this room, I know, worked in the West End much longer. And I don't think there's been a time where I've seen so many empty units in the West End. And I think it's more pronounced on Oxford Street, probably, than other parts of the district. I think a combination of, unfortunately, failures during COVID. There's still fundamental issues with the structure of business rates and the property costs in this country. And there's also a huge amount of development going through. There's about £5 billion in the Oxford Street district alone. So a combination of all of those has led to the situation we're in. We certainly don't want candy stores, and we think that's a structural issue, and we want to get better ground floor tenants. Of course, we all want that. But I have to say, we started off at 10% at the start of the fiscal year. We had a target to get down to 10%, 7% working with our partners. We're actually sitting at about 5% now across the district. Probably more on Oxford Street, as I said, but certainly it's going in the right direction. And what we were able to secure is a 70% reduction in rates by putting in community and cultural uses on your ground floor with Westminster City Council. And they've agreed to continue with that, the new administration. So if any property owner or agent would like to talk about that deal, we're very open to support you to improve that ground floor and get some better tenancies with that rates reduction in the future as well. On district investments, interesting, there is a significant scale of investment coming through. I say £5 billion in Oxford Street district alone, and some of this is the structural shift. What are we going to put into the ground floor? What's happening in the uppers in terms of all the new office stock coming through? Maximising the Elizabeth line, which is finally open, but building that in and investing in that as well. And we've been doing a lot more work at USN Company, working with property owners and developers and the agents to navigate through the planning system, licensing, community engagement in some of these big schemes. And we were working with a target of 1 billion consented development in the last 12 months. Just over that, 1.02. We'll take that. And notable schemes, Debenhams, House of Fraser, Phoenix on Bond Street, hopefully M&S if Andy Turton's here. Is he there? Exactly. And that's scaling up to about £5 billion in the next 5 years. So a significant scale, but it's going to mean a very different ground floor and a very different experience for our customers and our colleagues as well. But that's a fantastic opportunity for all of us as the district moving forward. Marketing and promotions, and the team have done a sterling job. There were lots and lots of people trying to market London, and London First were very good at bringing the recovery boards together and working with the Mayor's office and getting Visit Britain and government to try and coordinate all of these efforts. We were desperate to get domestic customers back in the last 12 months, back into central London. We're now working on international tourism. We set the team targets around making sure the West End got at least 30% share of voice in these campaigns. We did more than that. The team smashed it. They got to 35%. They've leveraged a huge amount through West End partners investing together collectively. And it was really terrific to see the mayor 2 weeks ago in Times Square shouting about the West End and encouraging visitors in the States. And that doesn't happen by magic. That happens because the team are really pushing that. So well done to the marketing guys for achieving that. Net zero and our road to zero. Dee and Will have done a stunning job for the last couple of years working with all of you and your colleagues, thinking about how we as a district can think about sustainability. When you've got so many targets being set by different sectors, you've got different levels of government setting targets, it is a very meaningful strategy that's been really well thought about to see how we can deliver collectively with the different sectors we represent for the area. It was launched in April with very strong support with the members. We've got a lot of commitment now from many of you in the room on that net zero journey for carbon, but also we've got real traction with the Mayor's Office, who was at our board 2 weeks ago here, and TfL and the City Council to get to one of the first zero emission transport zones in the next 5 years. And that will be a huge win for us to really clean up the air for our colleagues, for our customers, and for the residents that live in the area as well. So a lot of work still to be done. It's embedded into the business strategy, but it's fantastic we've been able to put that plan together, and it's got some real momentum now as well. Clean, safe and healthy streets, and James and Bruno and the team relentlessly working through COVID. The guys are on the ground 7 days a week, working on your behalf to support you and support a lot of activity that happens out there, all in addition to the police and the council. And it's getting tough. You know, we haven't seen the numbers of visitors return to this level from 2 years ago. It's actually the work that's being done and the pressure on the team is quite significant. And we've got the Elizabeth line to open as well, so it's going to become more pressured as well. So the work of the team is hugely important. Actually, over 60,000 visits to stores and restaurants and hotels the security team have done the last 12 months, which is epic. We have a target of 70% satisfaction. You gave the team almost 80%, 79% in terms of that satisfaction. So it's terrific to see. It's being used by the members and it's valued as a really high service as well. Insights and performance, Archon and Paddy leading the work here. And again, one of the highest rated services we had, that daily footfall through COVID. Everyone would be looking at those, calling up, disagreeing with the numbers, agreeing with the numbers. It was used right through, I think, operationally to understand what was happening in the West End. Used more and more strategically with asset management, think about adjacencies, and the agents are using a lot more of our data now, which is great to see. And Peter and I and the team use it very much in our lobbying, working with London First and others to lobby and understand what's happening in the West End and why the support from government was needed and why they shouldn't withdraw that as well. So it's a hugely valued service that we provide. The sales index, the footfall, the other data points that we collect. We were looking for satisfaction levels, at least 70%. Over 80 there, 81% you gave us for that, is the most highly valued service that you tell us through our member service as well. So we'll continue with that, continue to invest in it. I know Paddy's going to talk a bit more around some of the work being done this year on that in the panel shortly. The Elizabeth line finally opened, as the chairman said, after 4 years and lots of campaigning by various organisations. I think what's remarkable here, we wanted to get it open this year, and what we did in the last 6 months, and this is a lot of lobbying with Sadiq, with the Commissioner, to see if they could speed up the Bond Street opening, and I'm pleased to confirm it will be September. We've been assured, opening this year. I won't give the exact date, and that will be terrific for us going into peak season into 2023 as well. So the other piece of good news is we're the only bid in the capital to get access to a lot of data in terms of the revisions of their commuter demand and their forward forecasting as well. And that's going to be really helpful for us as we think about how we're going to get back to 10 billion turnover in the future as well. And finally, on member satisfaction, we are a membership organisation. We exist because you endorsed us, you backed us at the ballot. We want to measure the success. We had a target of 73% was last time in 2019. We wanted to increase that. We got up to 78%. Which I think is incredible, given the fact we had to reduce our resources during COVID, like everybody. We had to cut back, but we continued to provide a service, and you gave us 78%. So I'm really pleased. As Peter said, I might front it, but certainly it's a huge team effort that delivered on that. And our thanks for you for contributing and feeding back on how we provide those services to you also. So that was a snapshot. None of this could have been achieved, as I say, without you and our colleagues and partners working together. So I would encourage you, and I say this all the time, I know the team do as well, it's like a gym membership. You are paying for the services and the advocacy of new West End companies, so make sure you maximise those services, get involved in all the programmes and ensure that your colleagues are fully informed and know what they can get involved with as well. So I'm now going to hand over to Dee and the team. They're going to run you through the priorities for the year ahead. And I hope you'll join me for a drink later with the rest of the team, also with the new leader of Western City Council and about 300 of our closest friends in the gardens around the corner. So I look forward to having a glass with you then. And Dee, thank you.
So as Jace has already said, our last survey was in 2019, which was before the pandemic. And at that time, we had a satisfaction score of 73. So we're absolutely delighted that with everything that we've been through, we've managed to increase that score by 5 percentage points to 78%. Our member survey goes into quite a lot of detail, and through that we were able to do a geographical split, and we understood that, contentiously or not, our members on Oxford and Regent Street were the most satisfied from the survey. Now, we're absolutely delighted that our security and ops functions are valued so highly, and as Jace has already said, they achieved a satisfaction score of 78%, which we're delighted with, but fair to say we invest a lot of our bid levy in that area, so just as well, really, James. Now, I'm sure many of you receive our weekly Footfall updates. So again, as Jace has already said, it's no surprise that our Insights function scored so highly in terms of 81%. But there's lots of other things that we do for Insights, which I know Paddy is going to touch on a little bit in a moment. Our marketing activities due to the pandemic unfortunately had to take a cut in investment, so probably no surprise that we scored a little lower in terms of satisfaction here, but you'll be very pleased to know we're investing more in this area and really enticing our customers back, and we've already hired some dedicated resource in that area. Just to finish on the survey, again, 2 areas that scored slightly lower, but we think we've addressed those already, is sustainability. As Jason said, we've launched our Road to Zero action plan at our climate summit in April. And the other one was our corporate website. And as if by magic, Alice has already launched our new corporate website this month. So we hope we've addressed those, but please do get into the detail of some of those and feedback to myself and the team. So next, I'm just going to take you through our business priorities for the next 12 months. Firstly, our most important and overarching priority remains the same, to get us back to pre-pandemic turnover levels in the West End. We think that with our current forecast, we will have surpassed those by the end of 2025, which is the end of the bid term. But as we know, there is still a lot of uncertainty and a lot to play for. Of course, we cannot get back to those level of spend without our international audiences and that international spend. And we need to ensure that we remain competitive as our European partners. So for that, tax-free shopping remains high on the agenda, as does Sunday trading, ensuring that our visitors can shop and make the most of our Great West End at all different times of the day. Finally, our visa reform, we need to get to the level playing field with the Schengen visa and make it as simple for visitors to come here as it is in other parts of Europe. Our business rates campaign, we continue with this, obviously, ongoing. Following the review that was published in the autumn, it is clear the government must deliver on its commitment to reduce the overall burden of business rates on businesses. And we are recommending even more frequent revaluations than the 3 years proposed. On the government's proposed online sales tax, we submitted our response to the consultation last month, highlighting that while we do not support any additional taxes, any online tax must ensure it covers all sales, all line, and must be used to reduce the burden on our retail businesses. At New West End, sustainability absolutely runs through every single work stream now. It's not a siloed part of the business, it runs through everything that we do. And we're absolutely delighted that after 2 years of hard work, we launched our Road to Zero action plan at our climate summit in April. One of our key ambitions is to deliver the first zero-emission transport zone in the West End, and we continue to proactively engage with the City Council, the Greater London Authority and TfL, who are all showing strong support for this initiative. And last, but by no means least, we want to ensure we continue on the momentum that we have built over the years and the progress for the transformation of the Oxford Street district. Now, we know in recent years the street has seen some decline in its offering, and over the next 12 months or so, there is much excitement in terms of enhancing the area and the brands that will join. And we're working very closely with the new Labour administration in Westminster to ensure this remains a priority. Of course, all of these priorities are alongside what we do every day, including our inward investment, our proactive media, our marketing, communications, our clean, safe and healthy, and of course, insights. Now, with that in mind, over to Paddy Gamble to give a quick market update and an initial look at Elizabeth Line data.
Thanks, Dee. So hi, everyone. I'm Paddy Gamble. I'm actually Head of Retail Strategy and Analytics at Colliers, but also fulfill an interim role at NWEC, sort of working alongside Archam, leading the Insights capability. So I'm going to give quite a quick whistle-stop tour. I've got so much that I could talk about, but I've only got 10 minutes. So firstly, I'm going to take a brief look back at sort of 2021, look at what happened, what was the performance, but actually more interestingly, I'm sure for the room, is to actually start to look at what's been happening year to date in terms of recovery, and how do we see that panning out over the next 6 months, and then sort of further beyond. So first, let's take a look back at 2021 performance. I think sort of Jace talked about the number earlier. Total sales estimated around 4.9 billion. But actually, what does that mean? That equated to 30% growth on 2020, but was still around 46% below that pre-pandemic sort of 2019 level. So clearly still a very difficult trading year for the West End. One thing to note is that actually, if I looked at a slightly different set of 12 months and I looked at the fiscal year, actually that 4.9 billion jumps to 6 billion. So it really highlights the impact of those sort of lost trading days or trading months, particularly at the start of the year. It is important to also note that the recovery was by no means equal across the West End. The mix of shopper groups, the origin of your footfall, whether you're an occupier or a component part of the West End, ultimately dictates the speed and rate of that recovery and the level that you got to in 2021. And we've utilised various pieces of data throughout various pieces of research, such as mobility data, to track sort of consumer movements, but also understand who they are. We've used transaction data, again, to understand sort of the relationship between sales and footfall, and actually be able to segment and understand, where is the sales volumes coming from, and what does that mean? And ultimately, understandably, the recovery, both in footfall and sales, has largely been driven by local shoppers, domestic visitors and workers, which has obviously meant that those areas or occupiers that have a much greater reliance on that international trade that sort of my colleagues have highlighted as so important for the recovery, they will have had a weaker performance in 2021. However, and we'll probably all sigh a sigh of relief, 2021 is behind us. And actually, when we look at the data and we look at 2022, the recovery is really starting to gather pace. So when we look at things like footfall data, it is improving month on month. Last week, we referenced sort of the various sort of the opening of the Elizabeth Line and so on. It was the busiest week since the start of the pandemic, and the closest we've been to 2019 levels of footfall since the pandemic. What do I mean by that? Last week we were 12% below sort of those 2019 levels, and on its own that's a great number. Last week was not a normal week, and actually there's this perception that actually bank holidays they'll boost footfall and so on. That is actually not true. It's by no means the truth. And actually, typically in the West End, you don't get the workers on the bank holiday day. The Greater London resident or catchment resident, actually, they might go somewhere else in the UK. They might go abroad, particularly this week or last week, when it was one of the first opportunities for a lot of people in the UK to go abroad. So actually, to achieve a 12% below 2019 levels, amazing sort of jump in performance. And obviously, we can't ignore the Jubilee impact, which, again, is a bit of noise around the data and so on. It will have positive drivers to people to visit the West End. It'll also have negative drivers for people to visit the West End. So a real sort of most recent data when we look at footfall, great performance. Obviously, footfall is only one measure of performance. So what about sales performance? So arguably the more important measure of performance. So actually, when we look at sales data, whether that be through speaking to consumers, whether that be looking at sort of card transaction data, actually what we are seeing is that sales performance is outperforming footfall performance. So, the road to recovery on footfall is a gradual sort of upward curve, but actually what we are seeing in terms of sales performance is it's accelerating and it's actually coming back at a much greater rate. So, why is this? Or when we look at, is that normal? So historically, when you look at things like sales versus footfall, actually they really correlate well together. As footfall goes up, sales go up. As footfall goes down, sales go down. It's kind of to be expected, it's intuitive. But actually, sort of midway through the last year, sort of particularly as we headed into sort of September, October, November time, actually we saw a slight divergence, and actually footfall was coming back, but actually sales started to take off and accelerated much quicker than the sort of the footfall trend. Why is this? Well, again, it's going back to a point that Jace made, that we are seeing increased ATVs and we're seeing a greater propensity for consumers or visitors to transact when they come into the West End, which has driven that performance. So again, well, why is that? Largely at the start of that recovery and the start of that sort of divergence, largely, across the UK and the consumers that the West End serves, there was quite a big pot of sort of pent-up sort of consumer demand that people had built up savings or had not spent during the pandemic. And, some of it was released into the West End, and that explained some of that initial divergence between sales and footfall. Then, as we moved through to sort of the workers coming back and potentially the new working patterns where, you may have been in the West End 5 days a week, you're now coming back initially 1, then 2, then 3. 3 is potentially the new normal. Actually, what we're seeing is that potentially, those consumers that are coming back, they may be spending as much as they did pre-pandemic across a shorter period of visits. So that's very much what's driving the ATV, driving that propensity to spend. So, you will still go out for the same amount of after-works drinks. You will still go to the same amount of, trips to Selfridges, for example, whatever. It equates to the same amount of money. So footfall or sales, they need to be looked at together to really understand the true underlying picture on performance. Going forward, obviously it's going to be interesting to see, well, does that stick? Does that stay? Is that a new normal? I think others that have stood up and presented have, referenced, the cost of living, inflation, and so on. So clearly it's going to be important to see, how do these dynamics between footfall and sales, how do they pan out? And obviously, as a team, we will be keeping an eye on them, and we will be talking about them as we go forward throughout the year. So then finally, on this slide, I also think it's important to reference that actually visitors are really pleased to be back in the West End. After 2 years of lockdowns, or working from home, I think there was a sort of, within the industry, there was a hope or, a perception that actually people will come back because they want to come back and experience everything that the West End has to offer and things that they've missed over the past 2 years. When we look at the data, which is what myself and Archie do, it has backed up that perception that actually the most recent sort of Pwc Visitor Insights survey, it delivered the highest level of visitor satisfaction scores, highest advocacy and loyalty. That equates to they're pleased to be back, they're enjoying being back in the West End. Why is that important? Because we want them to keep coming back. And we've talked around sort of the visit frequencies and the dynamic between footfall and sales. If you can get them back 3 days rather than 2, 4 days rather than 3, this data is pointing to the fact that people are enjoying being in the West End. So clearly, an important measure. And so well done to everyone in the room that essentially contributed to that customer experience. Now, probably for most people, the more interesting piece, we're going to look to the future, but I'm instantly going to go back to the future, if that makes sense. So I'm going to go back a week, but still talk about the future. So the reason I'm going back a week is Crossrail is finally here. It's boosted accessibility to the West End, both to shoppers, workers, and domestic tourists. And whilst it's still very early days, we have seen data that's showing that the Tottenham Court Road entries and exits up 19% versus 2019. week on week, so that first week, it was up 53% on sort of the equivalent week, or sort of on week, which again, early indications, the data we've seen has largely been maintained in terms of the volume of people using the station. Again, to put that into context, yes, we're seeing the gradual return, the growth of users across the TfL network, but actually it was 4% growth across the TfL network last week versus that huge spike of 53% for Tottenham Court Road. So clearly a really positive indicator, particularly if you're located around the immediate Tottenham Court Road area. The impact immediately is probably going to be quite localized where you get those spikes in footfall. But again, from a data perspective, people like myself like to benchmark and make predictions. Actually, a really good sign of potential things to come in September once Bond Street opens. Will it see a similar spike in traffic? It was joked the other day that when I quite often give some really positive stats, I then sort of tamper them down a bit with a bit more realism, or actually let's calm everyone down. So actually, yes, Crossrail is it's a boost in the arm for the West End, and it's going to really drive long term. It's going to improve performance across the West End. But actually, in the first few weeks, first few months, it's going to be largely around sorts of movements of travel journeys and a lot of changes underground and people popping up at different sort of access points into the West End. So again, just to put that into context, somewhere like Oxford Street last week, Oxford Circus, only saw 2% growth in tube entries and exits. So again, below the entire TfL network and way below that massive spike that we saw at Tottenham Court Road. So again, taking that back to, is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? Actually, when we talk about experience and the importance of experience for consumers or visitors in the West End, actually for those visitors that regularly use Oxford Circus, that reduction and movement of people to Tottenham Court Road and then potentially Bond Street, their daily commute through Oxford Circus is probably improved, and it's probably increased that consumer perception and enjoyment of it being in the West End. We still have Bond Street to open. We still have the end-to-end running of the trains through the entire system, which will then lead to the maturity and actually probably the truer reflection of what we're going to see in terms of sort of boost to visitor numbers across the West End. But as Jay said, we have access to some forecast data from TfL, which sort of looks at around sort of a 13% sort of increase in annual station entries and exits for West End stations by 2023. So again, when we talk around growth rates, that's a positive, growth of 13% that could drive additional footfall. And again, like the last slide, we'll obviously keep an eye on the data over the coming weeks, and there will be further Crossrail impact analysis to come later in the year. So then, finally, if we look even further to the future, sort of beyond the next sort of 6 months, the work that we've done with Colliers has sort of predicted sales or UK generated sales to exceed 2019 levels by around 2023, and the West End sales to sort of hit that magical 10 billion number, so by around sort of 2024. Just to put that 10 billion number by 2024, which is not that far away. I started the presentation by saying actually the 2019 number was 4.9 billion. So that really shows that actually the impact in their quite rapid recovery sort of going forward up to 2024. And then sort of finally, and again, others have touched on it, what I like to call the missing piece of the recovery puzzle is the international visitor. We've talked about the Jubilee and the pictures of the Jubilee being beamed around the world at the weekend. That is a great advert for the West End and a great advert for London. And in the coming months, we are expecting an acceleration in the volume of international visitors. Again, I'm a data person. I'm not just going to say that. I'm going to go and look at the data. And the data does show us that, when we look at international travel bookings, for example, they are increasing month on month. When we look at the volume of inbound flights, they are increasing. We are seeing, routes that were potentially mothballed or stopped or whatever, they are reopening. So, yes, we're starting from a very low base, but we're expecting sort of a quite rapid increase in international visitor numbers for the remainder of the year. But, again, going back to my let's dampen it down a bit. We don't expect the full volume to really come back until around sort of 2024, particularly when you look at it on an annualised basis. So that's a very quick whistle-stop tour.
There's a time for to introduce you to some of the team at the USN company and to have a Q&A with the team to get your questions ready. First of all, I'd like to introduce you to my team. On my right, I have.
Hi, I'm Will Dyson. I'm Head of Sustainability and Urban Infrastructure, so looking after our placemaking, public realm, infrastructure side of things, also leading on the sustainability action plan that we've already heard about.
Hi, obviously just introduce myself. I'm Paddy, lead Insights alongside Archam.
I'm Alice, I'm Head of Corporate Affairs, so I lead on corporate PR media and also support on the advocacy programmes at Inward Investment.
Hi, I'm Michelle Malioco, Associate Director of Marketing, so looking after the very important function of driving back demand and conversion across the West End.
Afternoon everyone, my name is James Barrett. I'm Associate Director of Post Management and I look after our cleansing and subscription.
Okay, so we want to delve into a little bit deeper in terms of the roles of the team and what they deliver on behalf of the USN company. So if I can start with you, unfortunately we saw that I know the satisfaction for sustainability initiatives was slightly lower than some of our others, but rather unsurprisingly given that we had only just launched our action plan after the survey, in fact in April at our climate summit. Can you tell us a little bit more about the work that the USN company are doing to address the climate emergency here in West End?
Yeah, so we really appreciate this as a really top priority for not only our members, but visitors, residents, everyone within the district. So we started our sustainability journey with Bioregional a few years ago. So Bioregional developed the One Planet Living framework, 10 principles of sustainability, everything from carbon through to health and happiness, equity and local economy. And the journey sort of began with reaching out to our members and partners, understanding what your priorities are, and that was matched with some really helpful insights around future trends on sustainability, how consumers might be responding to some of these issues, what they want to buy, how they want to, the experience they want to have when they come to West End. And we worked very closely with the Sustainability Steering Group to develop a full action plan, which we launched as part of the Climate Summit, as we mentioned.
Can you tell us a bit more about the action plan?
Yes. I will not recite it all, but so it's available to download online, but there's three sort of core areas that the action plan covers. First of all, the pathway to net zero. So we would support and advocate for our members in the district to get to net zero by 2040. That's in line with Westminster's target for the whole borough and also acknowledges the Mayor's target for getting to net zero for the whole of London. We would also advocate for that to be in line with the Science Based Targets Initiative's definition of net zero. So 90% reduction and 10% offset, but also looking at all three scopes of carbon as well. So we had a really strong mandate from our members to look at all of the everything involved in that kind of carbon, net zero carbon. The second area is the sustainable experience, as I mentioned. So creating a sustainable retail, dining, leisure experience in the district. And then finally, air quality has been the top priority for a lot of our members for a long time. And as we mentioned before, we have the target to get to a zero emission transport zone by 2026. So we want to get levels of air quality to levels that are above legal standards, and that's a really big priority for not just our members, but everyone in the area. We're also going to be using a number of tools to deliver the action plan. So we've got policy statements against all of the One Planet Living framework principles. We've updated our consumer marketing campaigns. We've got a procurement policy for us as a business, and then also we've got the member hub, which is online now. So that's a really helpful set of resources for all sectors to help with achieving some of those sustainability goals.
Thank you, Will. I think it's fair to say if anybody hasn't been on to the member hub, please do go on there. There's all your latest legislation, and it really does give you the detail. You've had a flavour of the top line ambitions that we have for us as the district, but obviously we can't do it without you, so please do get into some of that detail and feedback and anything else that might be helpful. Paddy, thank you for your market update earlier. I wonder if you can just tell us a little bit more around the services on offer for the USN company members in terms of insights.
Yeah, sure. So I think probably the key one to talk about is the Pwc Insights. I think most people are probably very familiar and probably look for Archam's email on a sort of Monday and throughout the week. That's very much around sort of the data that we collect around footfall volumes and Springboard and so on. I can see people nodding around the room. Everyone loves that email. And, you know, that's a core piece of insight and a very valuable piece of insight. But I think as I sort of talked through the presentation, you know, it's part of the story around sort of recovery and performance. And actually, our members are able to sort of opt into or participate in sort of kind of what we're talking around, sort of an enhanced insights package, where actually, you know, they start to share with us sort of their sales data, so the transaction data going through the till. PwC will collect this sort of through sort of the acquirer data. So there's an initial period of setup, but what that means that once that is set up, it's actually there's not that much for the member to do. It becomes very easy for you to sort of pass that data through to PwC. It is all protected. It is all anonymised. So even sort of us as the insights team, we won't be able to necessarily see this participant, their sales are up 10%, their sales are down 10%. We'll be able to see that, you know, someone in a certain category with a code, you know, that's the performance. But the data is very, very well protected. You will know which is your data. So you will get, you know, your participant number that allows you to really understand your performance. You might go, well, we know our sales performance, but actually one of the things that PwC can do with that data is they're able to segment and start to look at, you know, what's the origin of the sales in terms of the international versus domestic split. And you're also then able to, you know, look at your performance in the context of your peer group or the wider West End performance. So again, you know, you might be sitting there on some sales data and going, do you know what, we had a good month, we're 10% up, but actually by participating in the programme, you suddenly realise, but everyone else is 15% up. So actually, it's about really understanding your performance in the context, firstly of the wider West End, and then, you know, there are further pieces of information around sort of, I mean, I touched on things like the international visitor mix, you know, understanding that by country and so on. So actually, some of that information, you know, it gives you actionable insights beyond the historical sort of footfall data, actually the forward-looking travel data, or understanding the US market is coming back more than the Middle East market and so on. That will help you sort of adapt potentially at a local store level. So I think I would describe it as an enhanced level of insights for those members that want to participate.
Alice, over to you. So we've had a lot from Paddy around the type of data that our members can access, which is fantastic, and the value in their own businesses and how they might use that data. Perhaps you can give a little bit on how New West End Company can use that data also to enhance their reputation.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest challenges we've seen, and probably more over the past couple of years, is, which I'm sure you're all aware of, is the death of the high street narrative. We get sent, you know, articles and front page things from members all the time to say, what are we going to do to tackle this? And the data programme and the insights team are really integral to us giving some evidence-based sort of reactions and, you know, retractions for those stories. I think a lot of the articles that come out are definitely sort of visual-based. You have a journalist walking down Oxford Street seeing a whole load of hoarding. Obviously, that's going to lead to a really detrimental headline. Lots of, you know, horrible articles are coming out. We've definitely had our fair share here in the West End. It's not just us, though. It is nationwide. What they can't see is that behind that hoarding, you know, is the evolution of the high street. It's where the investment's happening. It's where those new developments are coming. It's where we're seeing the mixed-use buildings come up, or the experiential retail, and all of that money is there, but at the moment, whilst it's behind closed doors, that's nothing to write about. So it's really useful for us to have those pieces of data to be able to sort of give an evidence-based and tangible reason for why we are recovering and why there is still that confidence in the district. Even if you're just putting out positive footfall figures, positive sales figures, you know, a headline showing how much investment is coming into the district, that will instill that confidence not into just customers, but also businesses and investors as well. So that's definitely a big challenge for us, and one that we are 100% focused on in the coming years. We also use it, as Jace touched upon, for our policy and government engagement. We can use it to, you know, completely evidence-based and tangibly justify, or not so in some cases, government's decisions on certain policies. With insights, we can track international spend, international visitors, and from those figures, we work with other partners such as Global Blue and MasterCard data to show that actually those numbers have gone down. Has that been linked to the government's decision to abolish tax-free shopping? Probably. So we can then go to the Treasury and say, we've actually got that tangible evidence for you. So it's not just from a media perspective, but also from that public policy perspective, that it is really vital for us actually to be using that. So this is my number one source from the corporate side of the business So yes, as Jay said, not everyone always agrees with our figures, but it's good that we have the evidence to back it up.
Absolutely, thank you so much. Luciana, we've heard from Alice around how positive narrative is not only important for business, but also for customers. Can you tell us a little bit more around what New USA Company have got coming up over the next few months in terms of campaigns and activations?
Yeah, of course. So New West End Company, alongside partners who many I see in the room today, play a pivotal role in elevating the destination's global profile. We know that it's our job to drive consideration of travel, to drive conversion, and ultimately put money back in your tills. But what we learned through the pandemic and through the challenges of the pandemic was the power of partnership. And actually, we are much greater and stronger together than we are apart. So G has touched upon it earlier. We've done a significant amount of lobbying with the GLA to form London's first ever domestic and international forum. So the Let's Do London campaign, which hopefully you've seen across every tube station, on your TV, on the radio. You know, New West End Company was a founding partner of that. Together with Grosvenor and others, and we've managed to raise £10 million of international marketing spend, and we are now live across the US in all of our key markets. We're also targeting France and German visitors, as we know they have a high propensity to spend and they're ready to travel very quickly. But beyond just the marketing and advertising that we're doing on all of your behalfs, we also curate a really compelling seasonal programme of activations and animations, and our chairman rightly highlighted the need for this vibrant, exciting and incredible experience, you know, and that cannot be rivalled online, that cannot be rivalled on the local high street. So you'll see much more of that coming through the district in the next 12 months. We've just dressed the flags with our Union Jacks. It makes a phenomenal backdrop for social media, and we know the younger generation are often influenced as to where they can get the best selfie. So it's looking at how we elevate the district with infrastructure, with dressing, with art and culture. Katie Thomas, who many of you know, is launching the 5th Art in Mayfair campaign in collaboration with the Royal Academy of Arts, really reinforcing Mayfair's credentials in art, heritage, fashion and culture. And from an Oxford Street perspective, we really see the importance of sustainability and inclusivity. We know it's a key driver for our audiences. So we ran our second Beyond Now campaign, very much shining the light on what each of your businesses are doing to drive positive change, both from an offering and business operations perspective. Towards the end of this summer, we'll be partnering with a sustainable clean power charity partner, to launch the first ever sustainable artwork across the district. So again, it's all about getting the right eyeballs with the right customers and driving them back to the West End. But our destination proposition is only as strong as the content that you share with us and the collaboration that you work with us on. So I would encourage you all to continue to really send us what you're doing, what unique experiences you have, products, menus, offerings. Yeah, hopefully that answers that.
Perfect. James, but by no means least, as more and more customers are returning to the West End, can you give us a little bit of insight into what our operational teams are doing on the ground to keep us all clean and safe?
So obviously it's amazing that we've got restriction-free shopping and Elizabeth line. So as Jason, all the speakers said, it's fantastic summer ahead. With increasing footfall, we can see unfortunately increases of crime, antisocial behaviour, and various sort of litter concerns, public realm issues. I'm going to first touch upon what we're doing from a cleansing side, and then I'm going to talk about for the security side. So really excited, and apologies, I'm a geek on this sort of stats. We've doubled the amount of cleansing operatives that are now working within the West End. What's a fantastic commitment. We've now got 8 purely electric vehicles. You might have seen one over the Jubilee weekend that had asked Luciana and my colleague Bruna put the Union Jack all over for the Queen's Jubilee. Obviously, it was a fantastic photo moment. I think Gaz liked it on Instagram or LinkedIn. So there's 8 electric vehicles are there, deep cleansing, flushing, and it just means we have efficiencies of service. They're more efficient vehicles rather than the old diesel vehicles we had, and it means, in essence, we can just cover a greater volume of our patch, which means we can clean Oxford Street not just 3 or 4 times, but we can clean the entirety of Oxford Street 5 or 6. So it's fantastic increases of efficiency amongst our teams. We managed to actually deal with 18,500 requests from our clean team last year. It was absolutely phenomenal. I think that figure is going to get incredibly high this year because of this efficiency. Very exciting as well, Bruna's working very closely with Veolia, our contracted cleansing provider, and we're going to be launching, or we have launched, but we're going to put out a wider comms campaign, a new Veolia app, a new NWEC Veolia application. Anyone can download it. It's facilities managers, store managers, security, community, even if you know Judy on South Moulton Street, very lovely champion of NWEC and the cause. You can download the app, and it means you can report all manner of public realm faults, from broken street lamps to litter, graffiti. That gets sent directly to our 24/7 operatives, who can then resolve the issue, send you a feedback, maybe a picture saying this has been resolved. So we've got that complete feedback loop, and it means we can just be efficient with our services. So the app, I think, is going to be an absolute game changer. I'm really excited to be launching it. From a security standpoint, again, we've nearly doubled the amount of security officers we have on our footprint. We have now a truly 24/7 security operations, from up to 15 daytime officers and 5 overnight canine dog patrols that are helping to prevent commercial burglaries, the smash and grab. As Jason alluded to, over 60,000 reassurance visits from our security team, what I think is a fantastic stat. And that's not just going in and saying hello. That could be responding to an incident. It could be abuse against the staff. It could be violence. It could be all manner of different low-level crime or antisocial behaviour problems. So again, our team are there to make sure that your trading environment is as fantastic and sustainable as possible. And then we work very closely with our key partners, the Met Police, the Council. We help to amplify their campaigns. So there's the Look Up, Look Out campaign recently that's hoping to reduce theft and pickpocketing, working very closely with the Council on Operation Jade. Operation Jade is targeting the souvenir shops and sweet shops on Oxford Street. So it's Joint Action Day of Enforcement. And I think you've seen in various news outlets, the Council over the last 6 months has done a fantastic amount of work targeting counterfeit goods, souvenir shops, and we fully support that activity and get heavily involved. And also just good old high visibility policing and high visibility presence. We're making sure that when the Elizabeth line opened, we were there in high vis, making sure we have that crime prevention deterrence message. And also we do all manner of different joint patrols with the police, Operation Servitor Counter-Terrorism, to just your general high visibility patrols throughout the day. So that's a little bit of flavour what's coming up. I mean, just on the horizon, it's going to be a busy summer. We have got Extinction Rebellion coming up, and what I'm going to let members know a bit more about in the forthcoming months. We've got fantastic season of activations and launches and events. Obviously, we're planning for Christmas now as well. It seems a bit crazy, but rest assured, we are always future and horizon scanning what is the latest risk and threat materialisation on the footprint, and making sure that we have the resources and the capabilities to mitigate any challenges we face. Thanks, Steve.
Fantastic, thank you. I'm slightly conscious of time, but I would like to open up for a couple of questions if we have got any in the audience for the team.
I have a question on the annuals of 10.4 billion. What was the percentage of that, say in 18-19, of foreign spend? That's the area we're missing now.
Yeah.
What do you expect could come back?
So sorry, the 10 billion. What percentage of that do we think should be was overseas? I think it's about sort of 40%, 30-40% of spend in the West End.
The international visitors numbers and the basis of return. I'm just wondering, how do you estimate that?
So various pieces of data sets. Longer term, we bring in data from the likes of tourism economics, which look at sort of global travel patterns and sort of migrations with Europe, long haul, and so on. That's the longer term view out. The short term view, we get access to sort of flight booking information. So we're able to look now. What's the proportion of flights that are booked coming into London next month, various 3 months ahead, basically, to be able to sort of start to look at the trend, essentially, which, that longer term view with the more economic approach, with the short term indicators, you can sort of start to extrapolate the two, and, they come together to the projections.
As things currently stand, it looks like people are moving their luxury spend out of the continent, particularly if they're long-term travellers that are doing multi-location trips. They'll still come to London, they'll still stay for a few days, but they're transferring their luxury spend to Paris, Milan, Madrid, etc.
You know, there's two dynamics when we talk about sort of the international spend and things like the tax-free impact. You know, does it potentially impact the propensity to visit? No, not necessarily, but actually it might impact the propensity to transact in certain categories when you're there. And like you say, a lot of these are long-haul travellers which may go to other markets, particularly, you know, impacting sort of luxury and so on, where the impact would be felt even more. Yes.
We talked about the ground floor changing. Do you have any insights of any exciting changes? We know about obviously IKEA coming, we know people.
I'm sure we're all signed up to many NDAs. Possibly
Is there anything that you can share that's really exciting for us all to know?
We do release a West End Spotlight every 6 months, which literally has a list of either the newly opened brands or the upcoming deals that we know about. We do beg all of the agents and owners who have any insight into that to also share that in with us. It's a big part of our inward investment program, obviously, to say if these brands are opening, your brand would be, you know, really compatible with that. So I can't off the top of my head. I know we've got Twist Museum opening, which is a bit of a rare one on Oxford Street. But I think it's very much, moving away from retail and experiential retail to just sort of straight experiences. I think it would be good to sort of see a lot more leisure and hospitality as well coming in. But you might have a bit more insight into some that are coming in?
No, just I actually have quite a loud voice, so hopefully everyone could hear me, but I'll keep it down here. Just that we're seeing defined categories in certain districts popping up. So you'll see the evolution of Regent Street being more well-being focused and health focused. We've got Gymshark, their first ever standalone store, which is predominantly experiential led. So you can go and do your yoga class in the morning, your fitness regime in the evening. And with Oxford Street, it is more pure play experience within the entertainment category. So whether it's a museum or a gallery or Outernet, which is the first ever subterranean entertainment venue. So I think it hosts about 6,000 spectators and the entire facade is digital. So super cool, and opening here before it opens its LA establishment. I hope I'm allowed to share that. Got a couple of partners. It's definitely in the public domain. And then obviously Bond Street and Mayfair continues with its kind of luxury, high-end fashion offering, which it simply can't be rivaled. So, but what's really nice is we're starting to see lots of different personalities take shape, which means we're no longer competing for share of voice. We're actually complementing one another's districts. So there's something genuinely for everyone now. But as Alice says, there's a formal document that will come out and share some of the names.
I hope that you can see all of the passion that all of us here actually in the USN company have for our business and for the district. Also, thank you to Grosvenor for hosting us, and thank you to all of you for joining. We hope you found the session really useful, and if anything has hit a chord with you, please do come and speak to any one of us offline. We'd be delighted to talk to you. So we hope that you can now join us in Hanover Square for a drink in the beautiful summer sunshine. Thank you so much.